Arthur Conan Doyle, The Study in Scarlet.
Chapter 11. A Flight for Life. On the morning after his meeting with the Mormon leader, John Ferrier went into Salt Lake City. There he found a man he knew who was traveling to the Nevada mountains. Ferrier gave him a message for Jefferson Hope. In it, he warned the young man about the great danger they were in, and told him how important it was to return as soon as possible. After sending the message, John Ferrier felt more calm. With a lighter heart, he returned home. As he came close to his farm, he was surprised to see a horse tied to each post of the gate. When he entered the house, he was even more surprised. Two young men were sitting comfortably in his living room. One of them had a long, pale face. He was leaning back in a rocking chair, with his feet resting on the stove. The other had a thick neck and rough, heavy features. He stood by the window with his hands in his pockets, quietly whistling a well-known church song. Both men nodded to Ferrier as he entered. The man in the rocking chair began to speak. "Perhaps you do not know us," he said. "This is the son of Elder Drebber, and I am Joseph Stangerson. I traveled with you in the desert when the Lord guided you safely into the true faith." "As he will guide all nations in his own time," said the other man in a dull, nasal voice. "He works slowly but surely." John Ferrier bowed coldly. He already knew very well who these visitors were. "We have come," Stangerson continued, "on the advice of our fathers. We wish to ask for the hand of your daughter, whichever of us you and she may choose. I have only 4 wives, while Brother Drebber here has 7. So I believe my claim is stronger." No, Brother Stangerson," the other replied quickly. "The question is not how many wives a man has, but how well he can provide for them. My father has given his mills to me, and I am the richer man." "But my future is better," Stangerson said angrily. "When the Lord calls my father away, I will inherit his tannery and leather factory. I am also older than you, and higher in the church." "It should be the young woman who decides," said young Drebber, smiling at his reflection in the glass. "We will leave the choice to her." During this conversation, John Ferrier stood in the doorway, trembling with anger. He could hardly stop himself from hitting the 2 visitors with his riding whip. "Listen to me," he said at last, stepping towards them. "When my daughter invites you, you may come. Until then, I do not want to see your faces here again." The 2 young Mormons looked at him in disbelief. To them, this competition for the girl's hand was a great honor, for her and for her father. "There are 2 ways out of this room," Ferrier shouted. "There is the door and there is the window. Which one will you choose?" His face looked fierce, and his thin hands were threatening. The visitors jumped to their feet and hurried out of the house. The old farmer followed them to the door. "Let me know when you have decided which of you it will be," he said bitterly. "You will pay for this," Stangerson cried, pale with anger. "You have defied the prophet and the Council of 4. You will regret it for the rest of your life." "The hand of the Lord will fall on you," shouted young Drebber. "He will rise and strike you down." "Then I will strike first," Ferrier shouted angrily. He would have run upstairs to get his gun, but Lucy caught his arm and held him back. Before he could pull himself free, the sound of horses' hooves told him that the men were already gone. "The lying hypocrites!" he cried, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I would rather see you dead, my girl, than married to either of them." "And so would I, Father," she answered firmly. "But Jefferson will be back soon." "Yes," he said. "He will not be long, and the sooner he comes, the better. We do not know what they will do next." It was clear that someone wise and strong needed to come and help the brave old farmer and his adopted daughter. Nothing like this had ever happened before in the settlement. Never had anyone so openly disobeyed the authority of the elders. If small mistakes were punished so severely, what would happen to someone who openly rebelled? Ferrier knew that his wealth and position would not protect him. Other men, as rich and respected as he was, had disappeared before. Their property had been taken and given to the church. John Ferrier was a brave man, but even he felt fear. He could face a clear danger without fear, but this unknown threat troubled him deeply. Still, he hid his fear from Lucy and tried to behave as if everything was normal. But she, guided by love, clearly saw that he was uneasy. He expected some warning or message from Young about his behavior. And he was not wrong, though it came in a strange way. When he woke the next morning, he was shocked to see a small, square piece of paper pinned to his bed cover, just above his chest. On it were written large, rough letters. "You have 29 days to change your ways, and then..." The long dash at the end of the message was more frightening than any clear threat. John Ferrier could not understand how the warning had been placed in his room. The servants slept in a separate building, and all the doors and windows had been locked. He crushed the paper in his hand and said nothing to Lucy, but a deep fear settled in his heart. The 29 days were clearly the rest of the month that Young had given him. How could strength or courage help against an enemy with such secret power? The hand that had pinned the paper above his chest could just as easily have killed him, and he would never have known who had done it. The next morning brought an even greater shock. Lucy and her father were sitting at breakfast when she suddenly cried out and pointed upwards. In the middle of the ceiling, written with what looked like a burnt stick, was the number 28. Lucy did not understand what it meant, and her father did not explain it to her. That night, he stayed awake with his gun, guarding the house. He saw nothing and heard nothing. Yet in the morning, the number 27 was clearly written on the outside of the door. Day followed day. Every morning, without fail, the numbers appeared again. They showed how many days of mercy he still had. Sometimes the numbers were written on the walls, sometimes on the floor. At other times, they appeared on small pieces of paper pinned to the garden gate or the fence. No matter how carefully John Ferrier watched, he could not discover how these warnings were made. A deep and almost superstitious fear took control of him. His face became thin and pale. He slept very little and moved restlessly, like a hunted animal. Now he had only one hope left in the world: the return of the young hunter from Nevada. 20 days became 15. 15 became 10. Still, there was no message from Jefferson Hope. One by one, the numbers continued to fall. Whenever a horse rode quickly down the road, or a wagon driver shouted to his horses, John Ferrier ran to the gate, hoping that help had finally come. But when 5 became 4, and 4 became 3, his hope began to die. At last he lost all hope of escape. Alone, and with little knowledge of the mountains around the valley, he knew he could not run away. The main roads were carefully watched, and no one could travel without permission from the council. No matter which direction he chose, danger seemed certain. Yet one thing never changed. John Ferrier was determined to give up his life rather than agree to what he believed would bring shame to his daughter. One evening, John Ferrier sat alone, thinking deeply about his problems. That morning, the number 2 had appeared on the wall of his house. The next day would be the last day of the time given to him. What would happen then? Dark and frightening thoughts filled his mind. And his daughter, what would happen to her after he was gone? Was there truly no escape from the invisible trap that surrounded them? He put his head down on the table and began to cry, feeling helpless for the first time in his life. Suddenly, he heard something. In the deep silence of the night, a soft scratching sound reached his ears. It was quiet, but clear. It came from the front door. Ferrier stood up slowly and walked into the hall. He listened carefully. For a moment there was silence. Then the sound came again, a gentle tapping on one of the wooden panels.
Someone was trying to enter very quietly. Was it a killer, sent by the secret judges to murder him? Or was it someone coming to mark the end of the final day? The fear was worse than the thought of death itself. Ferrier decided that he could not bear the waiting any longer. He stepped forward, pulled back the bolt, and threw the door open. Outside, everything was calm. The night was clear, and the stars were shining brightly in the sky. The small garden lay quiet behind the fence and gate. The road was empty. No one could be seen. Feeling relieved, Ferrier looked to the right and to the left. Then he looked down and froze in shock. At his feet lay a man flat on the ground, face down, with his arms and legs spread wide. Ferrier was so shocked that he leaned against the wall and pressed his hand to his throat to stop himself from shouting. At first, he thought the man was hurt or dying, but then he saw the body move. The man slid forward along the ground and into the house, moving quickly and silently, like a snake. Once inside, the man jumped to his feet, closed the door, and stood up straight. In the weak light, John Ferrier recognized the strong face and determined eyes of Jefferson Hope. "My God," Ferrier cried. "You almost frightened me to death. Why did you come in like that?" "Food," Jefferson said in a rough voice. "I have not eaten or drunk anything for 2 days." He threw himself on the cold meat and bread that were still on the table and ate hungrily. When he had finished, he looked up. "Is Lucy managing well?" he asked. "Yes," her father answered quietly. "She does not know how great the danger is." "That is good," Jefferson Hope said quietly. "The house is watched on every side. That is why I crawled up to it on the ground. They may be clever, but they are not clever enough to catch a Washoe hunter." John Ferrier felt like a new man when he understood that he was no longer alone. He took the young man's hard hand and shook it warmly. "You are a man to be proud of," he said. "There are not many who would come to share our danger." "You are right, friend," the hunter replied. "I respect you, but if you were alone, I might think twice before walking into such a trap. It is Lucy who brings me here. Before any harm comes to her, there will be one less hope in Utah." "What must we do?" Ferrier asked. "Tomorrow is your last day," Hope replied. "If we do not act tonight, you are lost. I have a mule and 2 horses waiting in Eagle Ravine. How much money do you have?" $2,000 in gold and 500 in notes. "That is enough. I have the same amount to add. We must go to Carson City through the mountains. You should wake Lucy. It is good that the servants do not sleep in the house." While John Ferrier went to prepare his daughter for the journey, Jefferson Hope packed all the food he could find into a small bundle. He also filled a bottle with water, knowing that water was rare in the mountains. He had almost finished when the farmer returned with Lucy, fully dressed and ready to leave. The meeting between the 2 lovers was warm, but very short. Time was precious. "We must leave at once," Jefferson Hope said in a quiet but firm voice. He knew how great the danger was, but he was ready to face it. "The front and back of the house are watched, but we can escape through the side window and across the fields. Once we reach the road, it is only 2 miles to the ravine where the horses are waiting. By morning, we should be far into the mountains." "And if we are stopped?" Ferrier asked. Hope touched the handle of the revolver under his jacket.
"If there are too many of them," he said seriously, "we will take 2 or 3 with us." All the lights in the house had been turned off. From the dark window, John Ferrier looked across the fields that had once belonged to him and which he was now leaving forever. He had prepared himself for this loss. The safety and happiness of his daughter were more important than land or money. Everything looked calm. The quiet trees and the wide fields of grain. It was difficult to believe that danger and death were hidden all around them. Yet the pale face and tense expression of the young hunter clearly showed that he had seen enough to know the truth. John Ferrier carried the bag with gold and paper money. Jefferson Hope took the small amount of food and the jar of water. Lucy carried a small bundle with a few of her most precious belongings. They opened the window very slowly and carefully. They waited until a dark cloud covered part of the moon, and then, one by one, they climbed quietly into the garden. Holding their breath and bending low, they crossed it and reached the hedge. Staying close to it, they moved along until they came to a gap that led into the cornfields. They had just reached this place when Jefferson suddenly caught the others and pulled them down into the shadows. They lay there, silent and trembling. Jefferson Hope's sharp senses had saved them. They had only just hidden when the sad cry of a mountain owl sounded very near. Almost immediately, another owl answered from farther away. At the same moment, a dark figure appeared at the gap they had been moving toward. The man made the same soft signal cry. Soon, a second figure joined him. "Tomorrow at midnight," said the first man, who seemed to be the leader, "when the whippoorwill calls 3 times. "It is agreed," answered the other. "Shall I tell Brother Drebber?" "Yes, tell him, and let him pass it on to the rest. 9 to 7. 7 to 5, the other repeated. These last words were clearly a secret password. Then the 2 men disappeared silently in different directions. As soon as their footsteps faded away, Jefferson Hope jumped to his feet. He helped the others through the gap and led them quickly across the fields. When Lucy became weak, he supported her and partly carried her forward. "Faster! Faster!" he whispered again and again. "We are past the guards now. Everything depends on speed. Hurry!" When they reached the main road, they moved more quickly. Only once did they meet another person. Then they slipped into a nearby field and avoided being seen. Before reaching the town, Jefferson turned onto a narrow and rough path that led toward the mountains. 2 dark, sharp peaks rose in front of them in the night. Between them lay the narrow pass called Eagle Canyon, where the animals were waiting. With confident steps, Jefferson led them between large rocks and along the dry bed of a stream. At last, they reached a hidden place protected by stones. There, safely tied, were the faithful animals. Lucy was helped onto the mule. Old John Ferrier got onto one of the horses, holding the bag of money. Jefferson Hope took the reins of the other horse and led the way along the steep and dangerous mountain path. The path was confusing and dangerous for anyone who was not used to the wild side of nature. On one side, a huge rock wall rose high above them, dark, hard, and threatening. Its rough surface looked like the ribs of a giant stone monster. On the other side, there was a mass of broken rocks and loose stones that made any movement impossible. Between these 2 dangers ran a narrow path. In some places it was so narrow that they had to ride one behind the other. In other places it was so rough that only very skilled riders could pass. Yet, in spite of all the danger, the hearts of the 3 fugitives grew lighter with every step. Each moment carried them farther away from the cruel power they were escaping. But they soon learned that they were still not free. They had reached the wildest and most lonely part of the mountain pass when Lucy suddenly cried out and pointed upwards. On a rock above the path, clear against the dark sky, stood a single guard. He saw them at the same moment they saw him. His sharp call echoed through the quiet ravine. "Who goes there?" he shouted. "Travelers going to Nevada," Jefferson Hope replied calmly, with his hand resting on the rifle at his saddle. They saw the guard move his gun and look down at them, clearly not satisfied. "By whose permission?" he asked. "The Holy Four," John Ferrier answered. From his years among the Mormons, he knew this was the highest authority he could name. "9 from 7, the guard called. 7 from 5, Jefferson Hope replied at once, remembering the secret words he had heard in the garden. "Pass," said the voice above them, "and may the Lord go with you." Beyond the guard's place, the path became wider. The horses were able to move faster and soon began a steady trot. When they looked back, they saw the lone guard leaning on his gun. They knew then that they had passed the last guard of the saints, and that freedom now lay ahead of them.